Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Good evening. Good afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. So glad you guys are joining. We have a packed show today. And by the way, let me know in the chat if you start noticing little different things about our branding and different ways that we're running this show. Call them out and let us know if you're liking it, if you're feeling it, if it feels good to you guys. We want to make this as exciting and as engaging as possible. So I'm not going to waste too much time bantering. I do want to let you guys know that I'm welcoming you guys now, but everything that you want to say, drop it in the chat, any direct questions. And like halfway through the show, we're going to be going through it and answering all the questions for the chat. And then at the end of the show, we're going to go through the chats one more time. We may answer like some questions in the middle from like the chat, but we're going to try to do a bunch of the chats right in the middle of the show and then another batch at the very end. Okay. So today is Thursday. It's the time for our Throwback TikTok Thursday. So producer, let's go ahead and roll, see what we got.
If you're a developer and not using the VS Code Pets extension, what are you doing? This extension lets you have a pet code right along with you. My dog loves VS Code, and now I can throw a ball with him in my editor. There's so many pets you can add. A cat, a rubber duck, Clippy, even a snake for you Python devs. This is the cutest thing ever!
Did the kids love that? I think that's a great way to get kids interested in coding, but adults love their pets also. I need to get like a pet because everyone's really telling me I should get a dog or something. So, all right, folks, our guest today, we have a nice little promo that we want to run to give you a little bit more info about him. So producer, let's run that next.
In software engineering, we solve problems, and it's always interesting to learn about the journey entrepreneurs take to create companies that build software that facilitates problem solving. One such entrepreneur is Przemysław Ładyński, who's the co-creator of Javonet. The problem? Making systems of different languages and stacks communicate natively with each other. And there are a lot of programming languages out there. How can this be done without traditional approaches like web services or such APIs? Watch as he demonstrates using this in VS Code.
This is going to be cool. I've actually had this situation at a job before where we had to work with two different systems and we're forced to use web services, but we wanted to have like a more native, faster approach, and we kind of wish we knew about this product, but we're going to bring up Przemysław to talk about this. So, Przemysław, welcome.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you, Reynald, again.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. I want to tell everybody that we're going to have two giveaways, each of them with a value of $468 US. All right, so you need to be paying attention if you're going to be able to win, because we're going to ask a specific question, and only if you've been paying attention will you be able to know like the answer. And the first person that's quick enough to type in the answer will win. But to know more about this, Przemysław, can you tell us about what we're going to be talking about today?
Yes, exactly. So I'm really pleased to join this live stream. I really enjoy the Visual Studio Code. I'm coding since like being 9, and I went through all of those Visual Studio versions that we had with the splash screen. I really love Visual Studio Code as it pops up instantly. So I would be pleased to show to you the technology we are building within the Visual Studio Code. And the technology that we are talking about is in fact the Javonet. The Javonet is not only the product itself, it's more about in fact the approach to the software integration that we are going to introduce to revolutionize the way the software is built. As normally when you are building your application with .NET, for example, you are supposed to use the library that is detecting the text on the image, like OCR library, right? So you just take the Nuget package and you just use it, and you don't think about exposing that through the web service to consume it. But the question is, what should happen if that best OCR library exists only in Python or only in Java and you would like to use it? So we are solving exactly this problem. We let you use still your C# code, build your C#.NET application, but use the Python dependency like it was available as a .NET package. So that's what we are doing. So we are allowing and removing the boundaries between programming languages and allowing to run them together in a single application through the technology called runtime bridging. So it's an approach of running multiple runtimes in a single process or remotely and just combining them very tightly together with extremely high performance. So also for the use cases, as you mentioned, when the user needs to use something, maybe through the web services, but the performance is not enough, not efficient enough, for example, for the real-time processing, then the people fall back to the solutions like this one, or when they just want to use the dependency, which is better being implemented in other technology stack because maybe Python is better for neural networks or maybe Java is better for something different, they can just have that freedom. So that's what we'll be showing today, how it can work, how you can do it, and we do that in the Visual Studio Code.
Okay, so a quick question before we get started. Was there any particular work issue that you ran into that led you to coming up with this idea? How was it even born?
So that's very interesting. So the idea was born long ago. It was initially born, I was taking part of a PhD work related to the object-oriented database. And that object-oriented database had special query language created with Java. And we wanted to give it an interoperability to be able to just pick the different modules from other technologies and use them directly. So for that, we started with such an experiment of letting the Java use directly .NET, which later evolved into the full commercial product that is currently being used globally in Fortune 500 companies, small, big enterprises, and even small startups, just for integrating .NET and Java. But after that, we found that this is really, really nice to be able to use dependencies from other technologies. So we decided to open a very big R&D project with our great research and development team, which I would like to thank them here during this live show. We expanded that to 52 different languages pairs, and that's where we are here. So we'll be showing you that latest version that was almost never presented yet live. That's from this year, May, available. So we'll be able to experience something really cool and really fresh.
All right. Well, excited to check it out. So yeah, let's see what you have.
All right. So my screen is coming up. I hope it will be a good bunch of information, not only about the product, not only about runtime bridging, but also about the way how quickly we can build applications with Visual Studio Code. So I will start with something very simple. I want to start with some console application. Of course, bring up that Visual Studio Code with simple line of code that pops up here. And then let's open the terminal and create new console application. I will use for it the framework 5.0. But in fact, we'll be building the application 6.0. However, the 6.0 has no those top-level statements. I want to have them for the better clarity for you during the presentation. So I will now just switch to 6, approve the creations of the launch code, and switch here to 6. Okay. And let's start building the first application. So that's pretty simple console application in single technology that all of you know exactly probably how to build. And we can do here like .NET, math, ABS, and compute the absolute value of -5. Okay. Really hard task. Let's run it. And once it's compiled, you see it works. So it's really easy. But what if we want, for example, use the framework libraries like math library from Java or from any other technology? So for that purpose, all we need to do is, in fact, add to our project the Javonet to enable that multi-technology support. So we can go to the Nuget, we can find Javonet. The Javonet SDK is available there. You can just copy that, paste it on your terminal, and just add it to your project. Once it's added, now you are really open to all of the possible technologies that you can integrate with Javonet with just few lines of code. So I will use my snippets from the .NET Interactive, and let me import the namespaces for Javonet. Let me put the license key. The license key is mandatory, but you can obtain the trial key on our webpage. So here on the try for free, you can register for the license key. You can also go through the registration for the beta program to get the latest binaries and access to the latest guides for the 2.0. So once we have this, now all we need to do is just activate the Javonet with your mail and your license key, and suddenly you can just create the JVM context. The JVM context in Javonet is, in fact, the access to the Java runtime. So you see that I'm typing Javonet, and in memory, I'm asking Javonet to spin up additional runtime in the memory of my project. So I can choose between CLR, Go, JVM, Netcore, Node.js, Perl, Python, or Ruby. So I will take, for example, JVM. And now I can ask JVM to do exactly the same task like I did so far. So I'm writing the line, and I'm saying the Javonet context, get type, in this case, Java lang math, right? And I tell it to invoke the static method ABS, passing the arguments like a value types and saying execute, get value as the response is a value type, and I want to have it here. Let me do the Alt-Z so we have it spinned, and append here the JVM, right? So that probably looked easy, but let's see if that will let us use right now the ABS method from the Java. So you see, instead of only the .NET version, we have already in the same application with the native performance, and there is the native binding in memory between the two runtimes that is letting us just to use the math classes from Java and interact with any method. This way you can interact with,
I was saying nice. So just for a recap for everyone, because we kind of went quick. So we had our .NET project and executed like some simple math function. And then you wanted to show how if we wanted to use like a library from Java, from a different, from within this application here, how we could access its libraries using Javonet, right? And that's what you're demonstrating, right? What you just demonstrated, right?
Exactly. And if you want to make your application even more multi-technological, so we have now started to use two different runtimes in a single application, and we can go more. We can go, for example, for the Python context at the same time. So the same application can run the .NET Netcore, it can run the Python, it can run also the Node.js, for example. So right now we'll have ability to use anything from JavaScript, anything from Node.js packages, anything from Python, and anything from Java. So I have prepared 2 lines of code with also the same difficult example of math ABS, but just for the simplicity at the beginning, before the things will become much more complex and much more interesting, we can see that it just works across multiple runtimes in single applications. So it's not only .NET using Java, it's .NET using Python, Node.js, Java runtime at the same time in one process.
Nice.
So let's jump to something more difficult. If we have, for example, some enterprise project in Java that fully dependent on any cryptography library or whatever related to Java, I have created an example that with few lines of code, almost the same amount of code that you would do just coding in Java purely, you can create, for example, the keypair generator. So generate the keypair generator for RSA, initialize it with 2048 bytes, generate the keypair, get the public key from that RSA keypair, get that key in byte array, pass it to base 64 and encode it for string and display it here. I know there is such a library, of course, in .NET, so the same implementation of RSA keypair generation, but I want to show you that even such a much more complex steps where you are retrieving some reference object, not only the values like number, which you can pass later on as an argument to following Java methods as arguments, are also fully supported with this approach. So the final goal is in
So
fact
now,
to
right
let,
now,
yeah.
so right now you're demonstrating passing information by reference rather than value. Is that correct?
That's exactly what we do here. So
famous interview question, by the way, folks. I don't know if you guys have ever been asked that. Sometimes in interviews, they ask, what's the difference between passing by reference and value? So this is like an example of actually using it in real life. But go ahead,
yes,
Przemysław.
That's visible here, because when you're coding in one technology, it's not so obvious when it's by reference, by value. But when you go between different runtimes, then you know that if you want the number, if you want the string, that's something that will definitely easily come from Java to .NET, and you can use it in further processing, right? But if it's like a reference, the object that you retrieve from Java probably will not give you the much value if you pass it to the methods in .NET, unless you still use it for the purpose of further processing through Java, like, for example, passing that object to another Java method and just interact with it. So
cool.
I hope you like that one. If you want, we can run to something even much more complex right now, or maybe you have other question.
Lucas asked about the performance. Yes, this is actually one of the reasons why Przemysław created this, because this is, from what I understand, this is like one of the best ways to maximize on performance, much so than using something like web services, because you're directly communicating with the modules, right?
Yes, that's true. So there's the native binding, in fact, the runtime bridging, not only our product, the approach to the runtime bridging. So the idea of running the JVM in the same process like the CLR or NetCore gives you the ability through the shared memory that the calls are directly by reference invoked. So there is, of course, some side, let's say, effect of the transformation of the invocation to the other technology. But when you make a comparison and you run some method 2 million times in Java, purely calling from Java, and you will do that same 2 million calls from .NET to Java, the difference will be really few percent. So it's almost like like natively writing in one code, because that's completely unnoticeable for most of the, or maybe almost all of the project. When you go with the web services, that would be few minutes to execute 2 millions of executions. So that's the way, the factor of a difference. But let me go to something more appealing than just the numbers and just the keepers here. So I will close the Visual Studio Code, and let me go to my web folder I prepared for you. And here we'll touch something much more tangible, related to very concrete example. So now let me bootstrap the .NET new React application here. All right. And now let's run this application. Okay, let's approve the launch. That's also the great by Visual Studio Code, that it's so detached from the standard solutions and standard technology stack. You can just run whatever type of application and use it in that way.
Yeah, baby.
That's what Austin said. VS Code all the way.
Let's wait for it to launch. Okay. And here with the .NET templating mechanism, once our React server starts, we'll be able to experience the web page in React. Let's give it a second.
So we're launching a React application right now?
Yes, that will be the web application, so we can see the different environments, how behave. So that's the standard one. There is some counter, and there's some fetch data component. So to give you more sense about the Javonet and the runtime bridging approach, we can, for example, imagine that we are in the enterprise that is responsible, like a meteorology institute, and we have a great scientist who built a great algorithms in Python that are giving the current weather. So here we have a forecast since tomorrow for the following days. And we know that our company has created that great Python open weather package which gives you for any city that you choose here, the weather conditions like temperature in Kelvin, Celsius, and some description directly from Python. So if we go back to this, we see that's exactly what we need here. So similar items. And if we jump to our code to controllers, we'll see that right now it's fully hard-coded. So let's have a look at that Python code. I have it in my .NET Reactive Interactive notebook. Okay, let's scroll down here and we can launch it together even right now using Python. So we see that when we take for Warsaw the weather, we will have the values as a dictionary. So that's a dictionary in Python. And probably somebody would say that to use it from .NET, you would need to expose it through web service, consume it through web service, and then use that in .NET. But we are building the backend for application, which is already web application. We just want to use that dependency, just have the ability to pull in that weather. So the same like previously, we can just add to the project the Javonet. So let's stop it for a second. Let's add here the .NET SDK, Nuget. Let's take the usings license key. In this case, because that's a web application and we want to use that module in different places, we'll create already the so-called invocation context. And that will be our weather object. And we just need to initialize Javonet. So we initialize the Javonet somewhere at the beginning of our application. I will do it in the constructor of this controller, but you could do it probably at the beginning of the application, somewhere in the setup of the MVC, but we'll do it here. And we'll say that weather should be just the Javonet in memory Python and get type weather. So what's different here to this what we did before?
When we activate Javonet, you need to pass in your email and the license key. That's how it identifies who can use it.
Yes.
Just yes. Anything else anywhere else?
No, you can even move it away from your code. So you can use the XML file for the activation, so it will be not bothering your code. But that's all you need. So just your license key and let's say the enterprise email, some administrative email to activate it.
Okay.
But what I want to show you is that with this example, we did something completely different than we did so far with the example in the console application. So there we were interacting with the Python native libraries like math. And here we have the PyPi module. So it's a module available in the Python dependency repository, which we can just install with PyPi. I have it installed on my machine, but you just like go with install Python open weather. Let's make sure that I have it. So it says it's installed, but you see that right now we go beyond the framework options. So if you have anything existing in the world, in the dependency repositories that you would like to use in an application and it's not built with the code that you are using or the programming languages you are using, you can just go here and install that dependency in the runtime that it's built with and just use it. So here we are calling that from package weather. We want to take the weather and we create the instance. So next, here we can just quickly extract the weather from there. So we will say exactly the same like it's shown on the example on their web page. So current weather must be weather, fetch weather, and the name of a city. So let's do it. Let's say current weather equals our weather object that we created before. Invoke instance method, fetch weather, and passes an argument, city. So let's pass the Warsaw. Now I put another 2 lines, which are just taken from the dictionary, because we saw in our snippet that the output of this is a dictionary in Python. So we are using the Python dictionary get method to retrieve the values from the key temperature in Celsius and the description. So we get these values here. into the variables on the .NET side. So we retrieve these values. And we can now just expand our weather forecast to show also the 2 days weather using the module from our great Python engineers. I need here the number, so I will parse from temperature and replace the Celsius sign, which we don't like to have here, to be able to convert it to the number. Okay, so we have a temperature for today, and let's put the conditions for today. So if it's about the 0 days from now, let's put the conditions we retrieved from Python. It looks good. Everything seems to compile. So let's try to run it. And as you see, the amount of code you write, even though you are using different technologies, is really similar to just working with one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's wait for it to start. Let's go to the fetch data again. And here we have it. So there is today, there is temperature, there is summary. We can just make sure if it's really coming from Python. And just dump here, go to retrieval of temperature. So we have it 11 Celsius that Celsius sign remove later. We have those conditions, right now clear sky, and we just return it. So that's our fully...
Where exactly, and for the skeptics that are out there, like where exactly in the code do we see that it's coming like from the Python module? Can you go back?
Yes, definitely. So let me go to the Zen mode. We are then more focused. Here, what we do is we ask Javonet to use in-memory Python to load this Python weather module. We create an instance of it, and then we just ask this module, this weather class, to invoke the Python method, retrieve the weather, and parse it.
Cool. And so we're in .NET, and we were able to access like this module that's in Python, and the main thing that we have to do is just install our dependencies, right, and activate our Javonet license, right?
Exactly. That's all you need to do. You just install the dependency you need within the runtime that you are planning to use. So it can be Maven package, it can be Python package, Perl package, and just use it from any technology you pick for your project. So There's this saying that the technology not should be selected for the project, but for the particular task. But it's really hard sometimes to execute, right? So the team is full in .NET, they have the .NET tools, but somebody says this should be done with Java or that should be done with Python. So we are opening that capability that you can take some pieces done with the different technology. And here we can see on this diagram what we did so far. So we did a console application in Netcore, which works on Linux, Mac, and Windows. And we were using the Python, we're using Node.js, and we're using the JVM in it to call the math ABS method. Also, right now we were building the application in .NET that is using the Python module, so directly the external Python package, and also was able to retrieve and interact with these objects and use it. So now I will show you some other opposite way. So when you build something and you want to share with other teams, and right now it's very popular to use the Node.js servers, right? So let me go for the Node application.
Before you go into that, we're about at the halfway point, and I want to go ahead and ask and have you ask someone a question so we can give the first prize away. So, but before we even do that, let's go through the chat to see what some people have been saying. So at first I see a bunch of, hello and good day, everyone. Luzak had asked about the performance. We already mentioned that and said that, this is going to be very fast since we're having the modules talk directly with each other. Ricardo Escobar says, interesting. I could reuse old libraries while rewriting them may take more time. So yes, I guess that means he could access older modules instead of have to rewrite them because of this because of Javonet, right? Ricardo Escobar also says migration between Java and .NET can be a pain. Daniel says hello from Togo. Well, hello. Lukas Ładyński says, would I be able to, for example, embed the Java control showing a chart in .NET in a .NET app?
Yes, that's good, supportive question. Obviously, from our team, I see that's one. That's our fans. So that is possible with the current version, the Javonet 1.0. So we even let they use the UI controls like the Java Swing, AWT, or JavaFX and embed them in the .NET UIs, or the other way, take the WPF controls or WinForms controls and embed them in the Swing, AWT, or the JavaFX UI. So it goes that far because of the high performance and because of the tight coupling within the single OS process. That's also possible.
Okay. Sugarmaz Boxer says, I don't know if that's or if that You need to be more specific with your Sugars. Piotr Krukowski. I feel like I'm being tested with everyone's name to make sure I could pronounce them right. Asks, where can I get a trial license? So you have a chance to actually win, which is going to be our first prize. But in case you miss out, I'm assuming they can get it from the website, which we could put up later. Is that right, Shamak?
That's correct. So the trial license is available on the webpage in here, but what we'll be giving away is the full commercial license. So somebody who's the winner of that will be able to just use it in the commercial projects and engage fully with all the features.
Okay. Patricia Komar says, is this working on Mac too?
It's working on Mac, it's working on Linux, and working on Windows.
Okay. Ricardo Escobar says, can I use serialization from Java on .NET? I wonder if I can get the bytes from a Java object and instantiate it on .NET.
So that's a good question and really tricky thing. So somebody has a good experience with both of the runtimes. So we know that the bytes are represented in a different way between the Java virtual machine and .NET CLR. So yes, that's possible. So with the Javonet, we allow to pass the arrays. We allow to pass the multi-dimension arrays and stacked arrays. Not all of that is supported with the beta version of 2.0. But that's something that can be done. So you can pass the streams because that's exactly one of the use cases. We want to allow to use it for the real-time processing, for processing the streams, and that will be possible.
Okay. So it will be possible. It's something that's being worked on, but not right now?
Fully working on version 1.0 and something partially supported by 2.0.
Okay. Lucas asked, what about the IoT, like the hardware drivers and SDKs?
So that depends on the operating system you are running then. So first of all, that's definitely one of the use cases that people not only can use the foreign libraries, but for example, when you are building a device, and you create a library for it, for example, in .NET, normally you would create multiple drivers, multiple SDKs and client libraries for other technologies if you want to sell that device to the customers with other technologies. But with Javonet, you can just build one and wrap it for all of the technologies. So that's also a great saving of time from the other perspective of a vendor, OEM vendor, and that side.
Okay. Lucas smiles, and the next one is Fabian Oleksiuk. Hi, I am very interested I think he means I'm interested, or he could be saying, hey, I'm a very interesting person. I'm very interested. How are implemented languages with another paradigm? I'm going to look at this library.
So that's in fact also interesting because we go between different types of languages. There's scripted languages like Perl and more object-oriented languages like .NET or the Java. So in both cases, our SDK is simplifying that, putting that into the unified way of interaction. So we are able to interact with all of these types of languages.
Okay. Maka goes, I don't know if that's related with the that we saw earlier. Quaranic Hub asks, what is the best for front-end designing for Android? I think this is completely unrelated.
That's not that far away because we get many questions about mobile support, but right now it's not working on the mobile platform. So you cannot run it on Android, you cannot run it on iOS, but we have the very early stage POCs internally in the company that are running it on Android. And then building the UIs for Android, you are able to use Javonet, but it's not something available commercially right now.
Okay, Fabian says, where can I find documentation for this library?
So we have
Website?
quite a nice section, the guides on Javonet 2.0 on the javonet.com webpage, where you can choose the Javonet version and then choose the language you are coding in and the language you are planning to use. So here I have the same article of loading the Python libraries from the .NET, but I can say I want to use the Java libraries, and the same article will just populate me with an examples of the JVM class and how I can call it from the .NET, the JVM class. So with this library, you can go through all the examples in all the combinations.
All right, and then Mo has the Javonet site is broken, and I don't know what he's talking about. It says ATM, but we have the site up right now, so I don't know what ATM means. But either way, we are ready for our our contest. Okay, so the first question that you want to ask Shemek, what is that? And what we're going to have is whoever answers first is going to be the winner, and then we'll give the email that they can just contact you for the license information, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so the first one will be a simple one. So the question is, what was the city that we are retrieving the weather for? I wonder if anybody paid attention to spot that.
Okay. What was the city that we were pulling information from?
Yeah, the city for which the weather was pulled in, the temperature and the conditions.
Someone says Warsaw. Is that correct?
Warsaw, that's correct. Yes.
Oh, there we go. So that was Piotr Krukowski who won that. So congratulations, you get a $468 license for Javonet. All right. So let's move on. So folks, pay attention. We're going to have one more giveaway towards the end of the show.
Yeah, so I will move on with the, let's say, last example in this manner. And I have something extremely interesting for the end of the show. So I encourage everybody to stay that long. So right now, if we go to the npx create app, we'll create a front-end application in React. Oh, sorry, I missed the location. So I want it to be created locally in this folder. In the meantime, I will open my snippets. Let me close the items we had here.
producer, in the meanwhile, can you drop the email for the winners so they can take note of that and claim their prize? Here we go. Email support@javonet.com.
Yes, we need to give it a while for the .NET to bootstrap the React application. That's the longest process, I believe, from those that we have for today prepared. But it says happy hacking, so we are on a way where we can start using it. So let me just write npm start and check if we managed to create a React application. So it's loading. All right. And let's replace the content with something we'll need for our project right now. So I replace it with just very simple web page that has just one label, one input field for the text from user, and the button generate image that after click calls this method alert hello world. It's using the state to hold the input from the user and image source. So if I do here like a hello world, I should just show it in the pop-up. So that's what we have as a begin for our project. Now we'll create a backend for it. I want to show you the completely pure JavaScript, so the React on front end and Node.js on the backend application. So let me initialize here the Node server. Okay, let's install the Express. Let's install the course so we can do the calls between our front end and backend. All right, in the package JSON, we're adding the start instruction. So the application knows what to run. And to run the index.js, we of course need the index.js file in our server folder. And let me copy the simplest possible server definition for Node.js from my snippet. So I have it here. Okay.
So, do you know anything about this? Apparently, there might be like something on like this page here. Sir, you've got an error on main page deprecated. Is that like an error when someone's trying something?
That looks like an error. I'm not able to check it right now. I believe there is an issue. Probably too many people try to enter the web page now. So
okay.
I hope it's not this. Looks like something collapsed there.
Yes.
So
go ahead, try that a little later on. But if anything, since we're doing our test right now, if there was like any issue, we would see that error also, right, on our end?
We should. So, but let's maybe not debug it on live here, but definitely I pause the call. I believe once the traffic decreases, everything should become accessible again. So let's move on with the example. We can watch here on the live video and then just have a look at the web page afterwards. So we have created a Node.js server based on Express with course, so it can be called from our React application. It's listening on port 3001. It has just one get method, text to image, and accepting the argument as text here. So let me bring up the run and debug section and create a launch file for Node.js. Okay. And let's run the application and see if it's working. So I will jump here to localhost 3000 and say hello. So we have a hello world application. That's good. That's the first step to go deep into the AI. So what we'll do right now is we have application that asks for a text and generates an image. And that's one of the great real life examples. So for example, we are coding in JavaScript. Maybe there is no in JavaScript implementation of text to art algorithms. So algorithms that allows you to use the conversion of the text into the images. But there is such a library, DeepAI, in .NET that allows you to do it. So we can go to Nuget. We can search for DeepAI. We have here a DeepAI client, and we can add this DeepAI client directly to our Node backend server. So I will show you how you can do it. So we have Node server with some Node modules. So right now, let me just stop the server. Sorry, that was the front end. So let's do npm start here back again. And let me jump to our backend server. This one. Okay. Let's stop it for a while. And let's install this module. So once you have some Node modules and you want to mix here also the Nuget modules, you need to use some package manager that is independent from the project you are in. So .NET install will not work because it will not detect .NET project here, but Nuget will do the work for you. So we can use the Nuget and say you want the DeepAI client, output directory, packages, and you will get your package installed in the packages folder having some different .NET DLLs here. So it's really cool to watch when the .NET libraries are just side by side appearing in the same folder as the JavaScript Node.js application. And right now, let's install here also Javonet. So Javonet is available for all of the top platforms, including the Node.js. It's working for the Python, Perl, Ruby, Node.js, Golang, C++, .NET, and CLR, and .NET Net Core. So for the NPM, we have the Java package. You can just copy it from here, and you can install it as an additional dependency for your Node.js project. It will appear in your Node modules, Javonet Node.js SDK for Node 16. And now, having this, we can import that into our server. So we are just doing the declaration of Javonet, defining the packages root, again, the license files, and license file for DeepAI. That's a paid library, but there is a quick start. If you want to just play with the same library on your own, you can use the free quick start key from them. We are not anyway affiliated. It was just an interesting example for us to try to show it to you based on that library. So you can try the same one. And we need to activate Javonet. So this you already more or less know from the today's video. So you just activate, create the runtime. In this case, the CLR, because we are loading the .NET Framework 4.5 libraries. And we say load those libraries. So Newtonsoft.json as a dependency for DeepAI, and some anonymous object factory that I will explain in a moment. And we set that context to be accessible from any root here. So the next step would be to just use those roots, use that object here in our root to generate an image based on the text passed from the user. So we take the CLR context from request app get. That's the way how you can ask for the object set globally in the Node.js server. Okay, and now we can create a DeepAI client with Javonet. So how to know how you can interact with this object being in JavaScript? So the answer is to, in fact, go just to the documentation for .NET. So if something is created for .NET, you go to the documentation of .NET and you just use it in any other language, just using that documentation. So we say that want that DeepAI API object. We want to create an instance of that object using the DeepAI API key. So that's how they propose to do it. And we want to retrieve the response, which will be a DeepAI invoke instance method called standard API, where we pass the text to image. That's the algorithm we are planning to use. And here is a small challenge. So it's asking for a .NET anonymous object. Javonet is right now not supporting the .NET anonymous objects, but you can work around such issues and limitations very easily with Javonet itself. So we can use Javonet to solve the Javonet issue. Sorry. So I will show you the class that I created myself. It's extremely simple class created with .NET, which is creating me a factory of anonymous objects. So I use exactly this structure that they had there, and I'm passing here an argument in text, and I get the anonymous object. That's why in this example that we were watching a moment ago, I imported that library defining my anonymous objects factory, and I can just use it to create that params object with a text from the end user for me. So I call that create method. It returns me that anonymous object, and I pass it to this library. So right now, I can return the response. In this case, it will be, yes, let me check my sample. Okay, that was here, the API object as string and passing this argument. This is what we received as an answer from the call standard API method. So if I go here and I say DeepAI invoke instance method, and ask that response that we got here, and ask Javonet to just execute it and retrieve the value, that should be all what we need to do. So we, in fact, just use the documentation from .NET. We try to replicate that in JavaScript, and we'll try to run it, and we'll see if it works. So it's listening on port 3001. Let's check what happens right now when we refresh. It takes around 10 to 20 seconds for the DeepAI library to generate an image, and we get the URL to the image that we need to display. So let's bind it to our application to see how it works. So binding to the application is something, of course, standard for React. We'll just use here and declare definition of a method that will fetch the outcome for us from our backend server. In our front-end application, I had this method generate image from text, which I used to show that alert window. Right now, I will change it with a code that is showing a spinning circle, calling our backend API, passing the input from user from the text field. And once it retrieves the response, it will take the output URL and show the image to the users. So in this way, you have an application created with React. And this application is calling the backend in Node.js. And that backend in Node.js ultimately is, oh, sorry, I didn't save that. Or I did save it. Let me check. This is the new instance. Talk with Apple. That one should refresh. And it's spinning the circle. And it will use the Node.js backend to interact with .NET implementation of DeepAI library and will generate for us an arg based on text. So you see how we combine the implementation of some AI client library with the Node.js, so implementation in .NET with the Node.js backend to just use it here. Let's write, for example, monkey on Mars. Yes?
So within .NET, we use Node.js to access the AI interface and be able to like.
We built entire backend with Node.js. So right now it's a Node.js who's calling .NET. So it's completely different way than we did at the beginning of the demo. So it's this direction. So we start from JavaScript. We run on Node.js and we use Javonet to call CLR and use the DLL.
Got it.
Opposite direction.
So let me. Map is really useful. I'm glad you guys have that.
Yeah. So let me put a breakpoint here so we see how it works. I will now make monkey on Mars image. You see that the breakpoint is hit. We can jump through it. We have here the creation of our DeepAI object. Our response is retrieved and it's passing the result. What is very interesting when building the multi-technology applications, if you own both the codes, so the foreign technology code like .NET and the main code like Node.js, if you connect two different debuggers into the same operating system process, you will be able to jump between the two. So you'll be able to debug at the same time the JavaScript code and the .NET code executed by this JavaScript code. So that's also very, very interesting way of programming, in fact. So here the monkey arrived. I'm not showing you this example here because we don't have that much time, but I prepared something really special for the end of today's meeting. So all of those applications that we're building right now together were built in the single application operating system process. So this is this approach. So we have our application created, for example, with .NET, created with Java, created with JavaScript, and we want to use the module from our other technology. So we spin up the runtime of the other technology with Javonet in our process. So our NodeJS application runs the CLR and loads the .NET library and binds to it. But what if you would like to scale out your application and suddenly want to say, I want my Python Open Weather module to be running on different node. I don't want it to have in my process again. So that's another in the cloud approach. So with Javonet, you don't need to drop your code, start creating a web service that will host your Python and consume it, but you can do something much more simpler, what I will show you right now. So let's go back to this weather forecast example. And in the weather forecast example, we'll have a look at the Docker container that I prepared with the Linux. Oh, sorry, it's not this one. Code here. So I have prepared a Docker container which has Python 3.10 image. It's installing our Python Open Weather module, installing the request module required by this Python Open Weather module, and running the Javonet TCP server. So running Javonet TCP server, you make this Docker being your host for your Python dependencies. And you can make your decision by creating different runtime contexts, which modules run on which machine. You can have multiple Python runtime contexts running on different machines, running different modules. You can have Java on one machine, .NET on the other, and for example, Python in memory. So it's up to you to make any mix of that. And that gives a great flexibility of scaling out the application and switching into the microservices architecture from the monolithical one with one change of a word. So we can see it here. We're running Python in memory. But if we want to run it through TCP, we just say TCP instead of memory. We type the IP address and the port of our Docker container, and we'll start the Docker container. So let me write the run command for it. Docker web app Python and P8083, 8080. In my great extension for containers, I have here the remote Python node. So that's an image built with the Docker file that I showed to you, and we can run it. So right now, it's hosting Javonet, hosting the Python module that we're using here, and we just changed in the code that it should not run in memory, but on that remote machine. So when I run this example again, let's give it a second to load.
Okay.
And spin up the React frontend. We have
Educated Logo says he's showing this to his middle schoolers right now. We got some sharp middle schoolers.
Yeah, and we can go to this fetch data page again, and suddenly we have distributed that our application to run this code where we hit the breakpoint, not on the same machine, but on our remote Docker container. So if I go to the Docker, I see that it was processing the call, and I can see still the weather here. So right now, that entire code we had here remains untouched. We only changed one word, and suddenly all those Python dependencies loaded in this runtime context are executing on this Docker, as we see here, that is processing the code. So that's completely new approach to splitting your monolithical architecture to the microservices architecture by just sending out different particular modules to different locations. It's a different, of course, layer of the software architecture than web services would live on, because still your microservice probably would be splitted with web services and be built in that way. But what we want to give in hands of the developers is that flexibility, that first of all, they can use any module and dependency from any technology, regardless of the programming language they use, and very easily switch if it should run in single process and suddenly run on a different machine. So that's really cool, even for us when we are playing with it. So I hope that our viewers enjoy that.
Yeah. No, that sounds awesome. Okay, so that was the last demo, right?
Yes, that's the end of what we have prepared. Let me just check. So I believe we can jump to additional Q&A if there are any questions.
Yeah.
So I give.
I'm sorry. Before I jump in, what did you say?
I give the voice back to you.
Okay. All right. So going right back to the middle where we last left off. Skylar White Gaming says, I unfortunately have to leave to code. I will see you guys later. All right. Good luck. Help team says ATT at the time. Okay. Well, that's a troll right there. We're going to skip that. Piotr, I will pass it to another one. I'm not sure what he means by that. Stony Panda says, hooray. And this next one, we already talked about that. Sachin, some flags. I don't even know what that I'm not sure what country the flag's from, but hello from there. Deathman says it's covering the nav bar only on a home page. We need more context. The bar. The help team says the people need it. Okay. I can't read this language right here by Warchik. Lucas gives a thumbs up. Marcin says Javonet, where science meets magic. It's a nice compliment. Where science meets magic. Educated Lobo, he already said that he's showing this to all his school colleagues, but he also says, great show. Then he says, we are just learning about the real world of web development. And the first people I could think about to do this was you all. You inspire the next generation of students. Well, thank you. That's another good compliment. Do you have any inspirational ideas or thoughts my middle schoolers could take away from your expertise in this field? Any inspirational advice?
So we have one inspirational advice. So the goal and the vision of the Javonet is in fact to tell to the young developers that there are no boundaries between programming languages, because that's what we grew up in. So we all know that you cannot use Python from Java or .NET from Node.js, but we want to change that perception. And we believe that when the young developers will grow up with that vision that there are no boundaries and you can use whatever you like, they will start figuring out the things that we never thought about. Because if you look at this, what Javonet is used for, it's used in aviation, it's used in transportation, in the factories, in manufacturing. We are always surprised by our customers, what they do with the product. And I hope the young generations of developers will inspire the world even further, showing what can be done when we take into the mind that we can just use any dependency from any language. So I hope they will find the interesting use cases and interesting projects.
Well said. All right, so last few messages here. Stanthil Kumar, off topic, can you consider Zope Terminal and add features to VS Code? Check out Insiders. We're always adding features to VS Code, and you can test them out first. Daniel Campos says, really great session, super interesting, and can't wait to try it. Alex says, chill Wacat. I don't know what that means. Ricardo shows a face. And Educated Lobo, once again, says, thank you. We will strive to be the best we can be. Nice one to end on. So with that, we're going to give out our last prize. Do you want to go ahead and ask the final question here?
So I was spoiling it a little bit, but I will remove the supportive image. And the question is, in fact, let me take the monkeys back. So the question is, what are the runtimes supported by Javonet? We can say that if somebody mentioned 5 of them, that's enough to win. But let's see who will remember the most number of those supported by version 2.0.
Okay, let's just have the heartbeat playing, and whoever within the next, say, 10 seconds can name the most runtimes that Javonet supports. Go ahead. They will be the winner. Let's see. It's gonna be funny if like someone just mentions like 1, and then like that's the one that you only end up responding to actually win. All right, folks. This is for the license, value of $468 US. I feel like people are probably Googling right now.
The web page is not working. That's now much harder.
Okay. All right, so
we can simplify the questions to the runtimes we use during the demo. So let's lower the difficulty.
You want to ask for one more? Our website is back enough to verify the answer there. Oh, the website's back up, so they can verify the answer. Yeah, you want to ask something a little bit simpler? I think some people are just like, what? Otherwise, we're going to leave it at just that first prize. All right, so I'm going to call it, and that's where we're going to end it. We have one prize that we gave away. I think the last question was a little too intimidated, but congratulations to the first user that won.
Yeah, baby.
All right, and producer, if you could throw up the email again, where the first winner can get their prize. That will conclude this stream. Thank you so much, Przemek, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining the session to everyone, and I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, feel free to contact support@javonet.com, and we look forward to your ideas for building the multi-technology application. So I hope you enjoyed some knowledge about the runtime bridging we try to share, some experience of the Visual Studio Code development, and especially the Javonet itself.
Great. And if anyone wants to contact you like directly through social media, are you on Twitter, or is this email? Is this your email right here?
That's my Twitter. That's my Twitter ID. So you can contact me at Ładyński on Twitter. I'm not running it so actively, but definitely if I get any questions, and we get the questions through that channel, so then I will be happy to answer directly by myself.
All right. So for everyone else, just a reminder, please go ahead and check us out on our other social media for VS Code. Producer, if you could throw up our handles. For TikTok, we're at VS Code. And also, we have a lot of fun videos on YouTube, in addition to some shorts. So check us out on youtube.com/code. So thanks again for joining, everybody. And Przemek, thanks again for the presentation, okay? I'll see you guys on the next stream.
Thank you.
All right, bye.